Okay, now using what we know from the other side, we said A is to B as C is to D, that proportion. And by the way, in order for a proportion to be true, the fractions have to equal each other, right? So the product of the extremes and the product of the means are called the cross products. Now, where in the world did Allison get the product from? Product means multiplication. Now, if I gave you an equation like this, x over 2 equals 3 over 5, and I wanted to solve for x, how do we solve for those? Well, you'd use the cross product. You multiply those. You go 5 times x equals 3 times 2. Those are your cross products. A times D, 5 times x, and 2 times 3, B times C. That's what those are called. You call this process called cross multiplication. We cross your arms, cross multiplication. That's what you're doing. So cross product means cross multiplication, okay? And here's the deal. If your product of the means does not equal your product of the extremes, they don't equal, okay? So they have to be. So it's in a proportion. If A is to B is equal to C is to D, and we know those two aren't zeros, then we know this works. If the cross products are not equal, then the proportion is not true. So just keep that in mind. So that's how we know if two fractions are equal. Now let's go back to what we know. Solving proportions. Today is all algebra. You should feel so much fun. It's just going to feel algebra. We're going to put in a little bit of geometry, but most of this is algebra. How do I solve this equation? You could either get a common denominator and then compare the numerators, or you can cross multiply. And I'm going to do the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. So 5 times x equals 7 times 3. I get 5x is equal to 21. X is going to be 21 over 5. I divide both sides by 5, right? And if you needed to see that, let me change that so you can see it. But that's your answer, 21 over 5. Yes, that's the same thing as 4 and 1/5. But did you hear me say 4.2? No, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to leave it as a fraction. So we'll do the same thing here. What if we have variables in both? That's okay. I'm going to do product of the means equals my product of the extremes, or product of the extremes equals the product of the means. It doesn't matter. So I make sure that I cross multiply carefully. Don't forget to distribute. So I get 4 times x is equal to 3 times the quantity x plus 2. And I do the arrows to make sure I don't forget. So I get 4x is equal to 3x plus 6. Honors or regulars, I don't care what type of mathematician you are, it's easy to forget to distribute those.